Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Issue Forum. I'm Kristopher J. Anderson, and I had the pleasure of being here with Judge Peter Vilkelis.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
So you're a sitting judge now, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what bench do you sit on?
I sit at Juvenile Court in the Division of Child Protection, where we hear cases involving abused and neglected children.
Doesn't sound like a fun day.
Well, no, it's not a fun day, but it's a very fulfilling and rewarding place to work because it's such important work, and you deal with the most vulnerable members of our society who need help, and that's what we're there to do.
And so you're sitting on the bench now, and you're running for election?
The way it works is when a vacancy opens up on the bench, the Illinois Supreme Court has the power to appoint somebody to fill the vacancy. So I was fortunate, and the Illinois Supreme Court appointed me back in February of 2011 to the bench after I get vetted by the bar associations, all of whom found me qualified and recommended. So I got appointed back in February of 2011, and after 7 months in traffic court, I got transferred over to juvenile court, which is where I want to work, and so that's where I've been ever since.
So traffic court's like judge school. You kind of learn on the job.
Yeah, I mean, traffic court's an important place to work, but I really wanted to work in child abuse and neglect at juvenile court, and that's where I told them I wanted to be, so I'm very lucky after 7 months that's where they put me.
And why is that? Is there a personal reason?
When I started my legal career, I was an assistant Cook County State's attorney, and I was in the office for 9 years, and 3.5 of the years I worked at juvenile court, and in delinquency and in child abuse and neglect. And I mean, I wasn't the only one who sees the pattern, but there's a definite pattern that you see of children who come into the system as abused or neglected children, and if they don't get the right intervention, if they don't get the right help, if the right services aren't put in place to help them and their families, oftentimes the children drift into delinquent behavior when they get a little older. And there's two sides to the building. There's the delinquency side and there's the abuse and neglect side. And so the metaphor I use is after a while, they just pick up the file and take it from the abuse and neglect side and carry it over to the delinquency side because that's where the kids end up. So I view my job as intervening in time to prevent that from happening. And if we do our job right there, then they won't be so busy on the delinquency side, and they sure won't be as busy at criminal court at 26 in California either.
Interesting. So let's back up a little bit. You said you were a former Cook County State's attorney, but let's even go before that. Where did you graduate law school?
I went to John Marshall Law School. I graduated there in 1980. My undergraduate was at University of Illinois, Chicago. We used to call it Circle Campus.
Understood.
And I majored in criminal justice there.
Okay.
And I've lived in Chicago all my life. I've never lived anywhere else.
And that's the Chicago way. I have friends from other places say, you never lived outside Chicago? And I look at them crazy and say, why would I want to?
Why would I want to?
So after
Our
that,
weather is perfect. Why would you want to live anywhere else?
Exactly. With the -1 right now, you get a little change of seasons.
Yeah, it keeps you alert.
Exactly. So with that being said, you went on to become a state's attorney right after law school?
Yeah, I was fortunate. I got hired by the state's attorney's office, and for 9 years. And when I ended up my career, I was a first chair lead prosecutor in a courtroom at 26 in California, which was a wonderful job.
I could imagine. And you got a chance to really see firsthand that you're putting away bad guys or possibly changing lives for the better for somebody, maybe protecting them from an abusive boyfriend or spouse. I'm sure that was rewarding in itself.
Absolutely. And what gave me an interest in this whole field is when I started college, I got lucky. I got hired by the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County, and I worked as a deputy court clerk for 7 years, all through college and law school, and all the misdemeanor criminal courts around town and the felony preliminary hearing courts around town. And it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You get to look behind the curtain and see how things actually work. So that was a great eye-opening educational experience for me when I was younger. And so it was just kind of a natural fit. I got to work as an assistant state's attorney, and then after my 9 years there, I went into private practice. I was a solo private practitioner for 20 years, just pretty much doing all criminal work.
Doing all criminal work?
Yeah, state and federal criminal work.
So you got to see it from the different side now?
Absolutely.
And so because you got a chance to see the law as both a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, tell me, what is your judicial philosophy as it relates to you judging on cases?
My judicial philosophy is rather simple. It's just, how can I help people today? What can I do to help folks today? I mean, anybody who comes to court, by the very nature of having to come to court, they're not having a good day.
Yes.
And you have to keep that in mind, that people are stressed, people are unhappy, people have all sorts of issues, especially at child protection. And I try to put people at ease, let them know that we really are trying to help them. And we just do the best we can in every case we have.
So a lot of people who are involved in the criminal court system believe that judges are overworked. They believe that there's a lot going on. Is there anything that you've seen that could possibly help ease that load, whether it be within your building or outside your building, where, like you said before, intervention, getting somebody when it's early?
Well, when I started working at when I worked at juvenile court when I was an assistant state's attorney back in the 1980s, there were only 2 courtrooms that that heard child abuse and neglect cases. Today, we have, I think there's 14.
Oh, wow.
And so there's a lot of work there. There's a lot of cases, and I wouldn't say I'm overworked. I mean, I work hard every day, as do my colleagues, but you know, I'm not complaining. And I mean, I still look forward to going to work every day because I just find it to be such valuable, fulfilling work.
Interesting. So when you're actually on the bench, can you tell us any personal story of any student that may have come back to you some years later to say thank you for the opportunity or thank you for that chance?
Well, I haven't been a judge long enough,
okay.
I don't think, for that. February next month will be 3 years that I've been on the bench. But I get a lot of satisfaction from helping especially young men who are wards of the court. One of the things that we do, once it's determined that a child was abused or neglected and the child becomes a ward of the court and the state becomes their guardian, is we formulate a goal. What's the goal for this child? Is the child going to be prepared to return home? Are we going to help the child get adopted? Have somebody else be appointed guardian for the child? Or if the child's older, you prepare them for independence. And I get a lot of young men, young teenagers, who come in front of me with an independence goal, and they just remind me of clients. They remind me of kids who I represented when I was a criminal defense lawyer. And when you're a criminal defense lawyer, quite often you get the question that all criminal defense lawyers know about, and it's, how can you represent those people?
Wow.
All right? And I always took it with a sense of humor, but I view these kids as the kinds of people who I represented. And when you represent somebody as a criminal defense lawyer, you're not really just representing that defendant. You're kind of helping the whole family. There's a reason they call us counselors, in addition to just being attorneys. You have to explain things to mom and to the aunt and to dad and to the siblings who don't understand why this is happening to their loved one. And so it's not just, you know, the stereotype of helping somebody beat the case. I mean, if you can beat the case, great, you know. But usually you're trying to cut somebody's losses and you're trying to help them get on the straight and narrow. It might sound surprising, but that's what I did anyway when I was a criminal defense lawyer. So I'm just viewing it as I'm just trying to serve people. I'm trying to help people. Wow.
So when you go to the bench on a daily basis and you're helping these kids who are, like you said, the most vulnerable in society, what's your guiding principle as far as, like, some people say, I see my own children on the other side of that bench, or some people just say, I need to, you know, be like I said, a public servant. You know, what's your guiding principle there?
Well, I just think life is a lot easier if you follow the golden rule and you treat people the way you want to be treated. And I just put myself in their shoes and how would I feel if this was happening to me? And you try to not be overly critical of people, because people find themselves in all kinds of situations that, you know, I'm fortunate. I had a mom and dad. I had 2 older sisters. We had an intact family. My mom and dad put me through school, and the day I was born, my father decided I was going to be a lawyer, so I just went along with the program, lucky me.
Don't buck the system.
But everybody doesn't have those opportunities, and I'm very aware of that. And so I try to play my good fortune forward and try to help people make a better situation for themselves.
So you touched on your own family situation. So that kind of goes back to something I was getting at a little earlier, as far as outside of the building that you sit in, outside of the courtroom. Is there something like going back to a 2-parent household, or having a literate family, or having somebody in the family who's a goal-motivated person to push along the kids? Is there one thing that you can kind of see that's a commonality among the cases that you've had, where if this thing changed in society, I would have a less caseload. I would have a lesser caseload?
Well, one of the main problems that we are confronted with every day is the phenomenon of children having children. And we have kids who are wards of the court themselves, and you could have a 15-year-old girl and she has a child, and she doesn't even know how to take care of herself, much less take care of a baby. And
I just turned 36 last week, and I can barely take care of myself.
There you go. So I mean, so that's the issue, that it's not something that, you know, that I'm the only one who's observed this. A lot of my colleagues, we talk about it all the time, that it's children having children, and oftentimes there's mental health issues. They haven't had the right guidance to begin with, so They need to be taught simple life skills, things that you or I may take for granted, like the concept of having an alarm clock and having to get up at the same time every day and having to be someplace at the same time every day, and it's a responsibility to be there. And these are foreign concepts to a lot of kids because they just never were taught that stuff because their mother was 15 and she didn't know what she was doing when she had the kids.
Wow.
So,
It's a cycle.
Yeah, and again, it's getting back to that cycle that we're working real hard to try to break.
Understood. So when being a judge, you're one of the pillars of government here in America. There's the judiciary, there's the legislative branch, there's the executive branch. Why is the judiciary branch so important?
Well, because we solve people's disputes. People have problems and they expect the courts to solve their problems for them. And they come to court and they find out, you know what, we're going to do the best we can, but you have to solve your problems on your own. And we do our best to try to help folks do that. But, you know, it's getting back to when I was in private practice for 20 years. You come to the realization that it's a real challenge to protect people from themselves sometimes, you know?
Sometimes it is. And that's the hardest thing.
We just try to do the best we can.
So what sparked your interest in being a judge? Was that your time as a state's attorney or private practice, lifelong goal that was in the back of your mind?
Well, I think, you know, when I was a court clerk, when I was a student in college and in law school, I had the benefit of getting to know judges. And a lot of them just kind of took me under their wing. If I was struggling with a subject in law school, a judge would try to help me out and explain things. And when I was in law school, there would be a particular lawyer who had a case in court that day, and the judge would take me aside and say, "You should watch this lawyer." Okay. And so I was helped by judges so much in my career growing up and when I was a lawyer that I just find it to be an incredible privilege to be able to be in that position now myself and try to play that forward and try to help other young people as a mentor or teacher.
So as a mentor and as a teacher, can you give us some examples outside of the courtroom, some things that you've done, whether it be helping them with the law or just everyday functional skills?
I think sometimes the most valuable thing that you have that you can give someone is your time. Mm-hmm. And to just spend time with people and talk to them and let them see that, you know, I'm just a regular guy. I grew up for 71st and Western. You know, who knew that I'd end up getting to be a judge? You know, nobody's more surprised than I am, let me tell you. And you try to just demystify the whole process and tell people, you know what, if I can do this, you can do it too. Don't be afraid.
So I had somebody tell me that the first 25 years of your life you learn, the second 25 you earn, and then the last 25 you return. But it sounds like you're returning a little early.
Well, I don't know how old you think I am, but I think I'm right. I think I'm following that schedule.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a good philosophy about the law. And, of course, you can't tell us how you'll rule on cases prior to them coming about. But for the most part, you want to make sure that people get a fair break when they come into your courtroom.
Right. And what you try to do, ideally, is even if somebody doesn't win, if they're not successful, you want them to at least walk out of there saying, well, he heard me. He heard what I had to say, and they lost on the merits as opposed to just not being considered at all and being shut out. You don't want anybody to think that like a fix is in or anything like that. You want everybody to know that they get to say their piece, and I don't care what time it is, if people are in a hurry, if there's more cases to be heard. Each case is an important case, and everybody has the right to say their piece and have their day in court.
So we only got a few seconds left, but tell the little old lady who walks to the polling place or the young man who doesn't think it's important to vote, once they actually get to the polling place and they vote for governor and they say it's time to go home, why they should wait there a few more seconds, go down ballot, vote for you and for some of your other judicial candidates.
Because when people interact with government, by and large, they're never going to meet the governor. They're never going to meet the president. They're not likely to meet the senator. Maybe they'll meet their state rep or state senator, but who they're going to meet someday is a judge, because people end up getting a traffic ticket, they end up getting sued, or they sue somebody, and judges are the first line. That's where people have their experience with government, and it's the responsibility of us judges to make that a good experience for people as best we can.
You wrapped it up nicely. And with that, we do have to go. It's only a short time to allow me here at KNTV, but I'm Kristopher J. Anderson with Judge Peter Vilkelis, and I hope you go out to vote in March of 2014. And thank you for your time and watching Issue Forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.